Before I let you go, I want to end with something fun. I'm going to tell my favorite personal Iowa story, and then I'd love you to close us out with yours. So I'm going to give you a second to think about it, all right?
Okay.
So as I know, 24 years ago, I'm in Iowa for George W. Bush, and it was freezing cold that night, too. I don't remember. It was late January, I think. And I was an advance guy at the time, so I'd been there for a couple of weeks, and, I'd driven all over to Indianola, to Ames, to Ottumwa, you name it, right? And I get assigned to the airport on departure, right? Remember also that Al Gore is also running that year, and he is vice president. I get to the tarmac at the Des Moines airport, and Joe, the tarmac is so cold, two things have happened. One, the heel of my wingtip freezes to the tarmac.
Yeah.
And as I try and step up, the heel rips off the bottom of my shoe and might still be fused to the tarmac today. But the chocks of the press plane, which was a 737, had also frozen to the tires of the press plane.
Yeah.
And so Bush arrives and he gets on the little plane, whatever he's on, and he's sitting there. And there are guys with sledgehammers trying to get these chocks out from the press plane. Meanwhile, we know, because there are a bunch of Secret Service agents there for Gore, that the vice president is en route. And if he gets within some certain boundary of the airport, they're going to shut everything down. And Bush, and I remember my boss at the time saying, if we don't beat Gore off the tarmac, the next voice you're going to hear on the radio is the governor's, then Governor Bush. And so everybody is trying desperately to figure out how to get this goddamn airplane off the ground. And thank God they get the press plane moving. Bush takes off. The press plane takes off. And then right as all that is happening, Gore's home motorcade rolls up, because Air Force One's there, bathed in white light and everything else. Or excuse me, Air Force Two. And we won that night. But again, going back to what I said earlier, we won by 10 that night. But Joe, you'd have thought we won by 50. Like, again, it was amazing to me, all of the energy, all of the adrenaline, everything else. And then, of course, I was off to South Carolina. Bush gets hammered in New Hampshire. We win in South Carolina, and the rest is history. But I think it's one of those things that until you've experienced it, right, it sort of doesn't really sink in with you.
No, I mean, Iowa is, there's just so many, but the level of how cold it can get, it's just, I've been all over the place. In all kinds of, supposedly cold places.
Right.
But man, the way that wind blows down.
Well, it just comes off the Rockies and there's nothing to stop it for 2,000 miles.
And I know people in Chicago, complain about the wind coming in there, but it's nothing like it as it goes through Des Moines in particular. But no, the plane stuff is another. I remember coming into Council Bluffs with Dick Gephardt.
Yeah,
and same thing. It was cold and like freezing, and it was in a relatively small plane, but a big one. Like the DC-3 maybe. We flew in this thing that the press had nicknamed the Sky Pig because it didn't fly. It just sort of, hummed and would drop.
We had one of those in 2000. Yeah, it was a 727 that no one could ever believe got off the ground.
Yeah, it was just didn't fly. You were just like white knuckling the whole way, and I'm like not a white knuckle flyer. But anyway, we come into that airport, and just as the nose of the plane's can you see through the thing, there's a plane on the runway.
Oh God!
And we, and you see those guys pulling up and doing the throttle, and you see in the tail of the other plane just as you're going by. But this kind of stuff happens in that state all the time. People there were a bunch of victory night, like the Mondale winning 32 points, 49-17 was just like an amazing night. Yeah. And then it didn't matter. In 10 days, Hart beat us in New Hampshire, and the entire thing changed. Gephardt coming back from dead last at 7% and with 10 days left, flying past Dukakis and Simon and winning. Yeah. Was another one. But then my worst finish in the state is the one where I'm running the campaign, Howard
of course.
Dean.
Well, yeah, of course.
You know,
right.
Where we take third.
When no one knows your name, everything goes great.
Yeah. No. So no, but that one, it was really the way we unraveled. It was just like, I mean, it was the worst. I mean, just everything that could go wrong those last 10 days went wrong, and we knew it. Trump might have this problem in New Hampshire. We knew we lost a third of our support. We were calling 1,000 random people every night, going like, "Hey, you know," acting like we were pollsters and like, "Who are you for?" 1,000 of we knew these were Dean supporters. Yeah. We'd call them, and like 689 of them were still with us, and we're the other 300 were saying somebody else.
Oh God!
And so you're sitting there, and you can't call all. You did the spot check. The spot check sucks.
Yeah.
Now you got to pull them all, because what are you going to do? We've got 80,000 or 50,000 people that we know we ID'd. We had no choice. I mean, I looked at my entire field team and said, close your eyes and pull every single one of them, knowing we knew that they weren't going to, you know, that we were probably pulling out the Zach voters that would make Gephardt or somebody go biased, which is exactly what happened. I think the Trump thing, you know, having a good organization on the ground in New Hampshire, he was at 50-something a month or two ago, you know, a while back. If they've ID'd all these people and they think something happened because he's now at 39 and she's at 32 or whatever she's at, there's no way that when they do the spot check that they're all there. Going there. They're going to have to pull all those people. That's what I'm saying.
But that's sort of like, you've been in this situation too. It's like when you realize to keep a campaign alive, okay, you have to raise X dollars a day. Yeah. And then you don't raise X dollars, so now it's X dollars plus 50, and then about a weekend you're like, well, this ain't gonna happen.
Yeah, no, and like, you know, the one thing I'm really bummed out about is that the Democratic Party pulled out of Iowa. I just I understand maybe not doing the caucus or something, but I really trust Iowa's voters. I mean, I know they're quirky and but you know, I think there's that magic of being in somebody's room, you know,
living room,
in their living room or around their kitchen table with 30 other neighbors, and answering their questions. They're pretty fair about it. I mean, they'll give you a listen. That doesn't mean you're going to come out alive, but
they're nicer than the people in New Hampshire. Anyway.
Yeah, New Hampshire's more professional about it. I mean, it's like it's more. You know, like how, you know, are you for this guy? I don't know. I've only met him 6 times.
Right,
you know,
exactly.
It's like, it's a much more, no, but, you know, Iowa always struck me as, you know, look, even our party that goes into the whole thing about how, you know, it's not a diverse place. It shouldn't be choosing, you know, we need more diverse states to choose our nominee. They nominated Barack Obama.
Right.
They defeated Hillary Clinton by voting for Barack Obama.
Right.
I mean, it's not, I'm just saying, like, there's a piece of me that, you know, a bunch of, on the Republican side this time, 50% of them went with Trump, but, you know, 49% said not so fast.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean, you know, that won't, it won't eventually will out. But I'm saying,
but that also, whether or not it's Iowa and New Hampshire, that duality, right? Midwestern conservative, right? Northeastern independent / libertarian, right? Suburban,
right?
Urban, right? Because it's got Boston nearby. But again, that's the first part of the gauntlet to be leader of the free world. Is you've got to go before Steve, right, in Council Bluffs, and you got to go before Biff, right, on the seacoast.
Yeah.
And if you can't put up with Joe and Biff, right, how are you going to take on the worst people in the world?
Yeah, no, and I also think that both of particularly for Democrats, I think candidates grow a lot more.
Yeah.
In Iowa, I've always thought that. I know Gephardt did. Mondale didn't need to. Mondale was amazing. Actually, my best story about which I'll never forget. We went into Sioux City to a meat packing plant.
Oh God.
And
by the way, if you haven't been to Sioux City, the whole town smells like that.
Right. We go into this meat packing plant, and all the workers are all gathered there, you know, their smocks and the stuff. And Mondale starts the speech. just walks up to the podium or whatever where the little mic was makeshift, and just stands up there and lifts his hands up in the air with his fingers down, bent down. So there's only like 2 or 3 fingers in each hand in the air.
Yeah.
And screams out, "Show me your hands." And all these hands go up and there's fingers missing.
Oh, man.
Across the whole floor.
Oh, man.
And it was like, dude, this guy
knows it.
He knows it.
Yeah.
He's Minnesota.
Yeah, sure.
So there was like such a connection that this guy had with, which was genuine. He really knew. This wasn't, he did stuff like that, but that one, and he was a great guy. Would have been a great president.
Right.
But that's the other weird thing about this business, right? Yeah, you'd be the greatest president we ever had, except guess what? You just drew Ronald Reagan as your,
right.
or Dole who draws.
You were being seated, and it's like, sorry, pal.
Yeah, there's Dole who draws Bill Clinton.
Right.
You know, I mean, there's who I think probably would have been a
more than adequate president.
Yeah, a really good president. I wasn't for him,
right?
But I've always thought Dole probably would have been he
was the epitome of decency.
Yeah, but so you get that's what I mean. The guys like Dick Gephardt and Mondale that you've spent that kind of time with them in a place like Iowa, you really see whether that connection's there or not, and that's something I don't think that DeSantis had much ability in. Obviously he had a lot of money and could build a good organization, and it got him second place. He deserves that, but I just didn't ever picked up that he had that.
Look, I mean, and we'll close with this. You can have a great campaign staff. You can have a lot of money. You can have tailwinds at your back, literally and figuratively. But at the end of the day, if your candidate sucks, sorry.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Because staff matters what? On the margin at best?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember just thinking about like Barack Obama. In 2009, I'm living in California. All these people, Facebook. Look what Barack Obama did with Facebook. I said, Barack Obama could have won this election with Michelle Obama and his kids in an airplane.
Yeah.
Right?
That's true.
Facebook was a tool. Barack Obama was what drove it. And I think that's we sometimes forget that. Like, oh, yeah, you can have all this whiz-bang stuff, but at the end of the day, that person's got to look into the camera. They got to look into the eyes of those Americans. And if they don't have it, they don't have it.
No, and all of them, the bulk of them get in not having any idea what they're getting into. No. And that was clearly the case with DeSantis. I mean,
and it doesn't matter.
And
with some of them, Joe, as you know, probably better than anybody, you can't convince them of that sometimes.
No, I've tried. I mean, you sit there and go like, I mean, literally the entire field that ran against Biden in 2020.
Right.
I mean, literally every one of them, not every one of, but a lot of Mayor Pete.
Other than Sanders, probably.
No, but Mayor Pete.
Warren.
Klobuchar.
Harris.
I'm talking, literally a lot of them called me and said, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. And I was like, do you have, you know, because they were so ill prepared.
Right.
For not because they wouldn't be good candidates, but they just, I'd ask them and they just hadn't really thought it through yet.
Right.
And I was like, no, Joe Biden's going to cream you.
Right.
And they'd all look at me like,
again, and it's one of those things where your willingness to be honest to a potential candidate in their dining room with their family is inversely proportional to how much money you're probably going to make in politics.
Yeah. Well, I would put it this way. Those were some of the, in many cases, it was the last conversation I had with the person I was talking to. But a lot of them, enter thinking that this is like their run for governor or like their run for the Senate was, or like their, whatever. Yeah. And it ain't anything like it. And which is another reason I think Iowa and New Hampshire, if you're going to start out and you're going to like run the gauntlet, these are two places where, and like I said, maybe this is just, look, I've got to be, honest about it. Two of the biggest wins I ever had in my life were in Iowa. So maybe I'm like too nostalgic about the place.
But I'm just thinking about this, and it's probably not an original idea, but running for president as a candidate that gets some level of traction, not the ones who do it because they just want to write a book or get a deal on CNN. Like, it's probably the closest approximation from a work exhaustion matrix you're going to get other than being president. Because when you're running for president and you've gained any sort of attention, traction, success, whatever, it's 24/7.
Yeah.
It never stops. Everything is scrutinized. Everything is over-scrutinized. You've got a board press corps with you. They've heard the same speech, and they're going to find that one little thing, and everybody's going to go, how come we didn't think about that little thing? Well, because there were 9 million other little things over here we were worried about.
Yeah. No, it's that's what I'm saying. I think starting it at that level, and, I don't know what the real answer is. It's not moving it to Michigan or, it's there's no way. You'd have to, it'd just be all about how much money you can raise at that point. So, people talk about rotating, like starting in South Dakota first and Maine, and then going next time to, but I still really, I really wasn't a big fan of the Democratic Party saying, we're skipping Iowa this time.
Well, maybe in 2028, Joe. All right, Joe, before we let you go, if you still dare to tread on social media, where can we find you?
At Joe Trippi on Twitter. I think
I like how you said that, on Twitter.
Yeah, well, that's how I still call it Twitter.
Yeah, no, it is what it is, unfortunately.
And I'm thinking of helping start a new Twitter.
Oh,
but
we'll certainly keep us posted.
And but that Trippi Show podcast, if you
tune in, guys, it's a great show. Joe and Alex do a great show. They will break down all the stuff just like we did today, because Joe is smarter than I am and understands the math better than I do. So, Joe, I want to thank you. As always, gang, you can find me on Twitter at Reed Galen, on Threads and Instagram at Reed_Galen_LP, and at Substack at The Home Front. Joe, thanks for joining me.
Great to be with you.
Thanks again to everyone for listening. Be sure to follow and subscribe to The Lincoln Project on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, or however you listen. Don't forget to leave a 5-star review. To connect with us, follow us on Twitter at Project Lincoln, and for more information on our movement, to join our mailing list, subscribe to our newsletter, or make a contribution to our efforts, visit lincolnproject.us. If you want to message the podcast directly, please send an email to podcast@lincolnproject.us. And if you want to personally join the fight to save our nation's democracy, visit jointheunion.us. For The Lincoln Project, I'm Reed Galen. I'll see you on the next episode.